When my friends say, hey, do you want to go see this movie or something like that, I'm like, hey, I can do that. I'm a Christian. I'm free. I can do all things. I know what's going on. I can safeguard myself from this evil stuff. I like listening to angry rap music sometimes. I'm a big rap fan. You can tell how hardcore I am. I do. Sometimes the language and the content. Is this thing still? There we go.
You're fine.
The language and the content in some of those songs are just it's just ridiculous. Like I can't even imagine it. But sometimes I still listen to it, and I derive pleasure from listening to that kind of music. Sometimes I just have conversations with people, and we tell rude jokes or whatever it is, and all this stuff taints us. You can't walk into this slime pit and come out sparkling clean like you were before. Everything that we do colors us. It taints us. And I wish that I could go back to so many times in my life, and I wish that I could do things different. I wish that I didn't know what it was like to take something that didn't belong to me. I wish I didn't know what it was like to lie to somebody. I wish I just didn't know at all what pornography was. I wish that so many things that I wish that I could take back. I wish that I wouldn't have been so focused on just entertainment and video games and movies and music and raunchy conversation. I wish that I would have been focused on the things of God. Because, like it or not, when you are exposed to evil things, you become tainted by it. You do not become innocent. And Paul's wish for the Roman church is that they remain innocent of evil. Now, is it possible to be innocent of evil? Is it? Verbalize your answers. No, it's not. At some point or another, every Christian is going to become tainted by evil. We live in a sinful world. We can't help it. That's why when we get to heaven, God looks at Christ's righteousness, right? He doesn't look at the taint in our lives and say, oh, you were pretty bad, you're not getting in, or oh, I guess you were good enough, because we've all been tainted by sin. But at the same time, there's degrees of evil that you can be immersed in. God doesn't conditionally save us, but He does conditionally reward us. In 1 Corinthians 3, it talks about carnal Christians. The Corinthian church was really, really messed up, and they had people that were just sinning like crazy all over. And he says, "For we are God's co-workers, you are God's field, God's building. According to God's grace that was given me, I have laid a foundation as a skilled master, but each one must be careful how he builds on it. If anyone builds on that foundation, God, our salvation, if anyone builds on that foundation with gold, silver, costly stones, wood, hay, or straw, each one's work will become obvious, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire. The fire will test the quality of each one's work. If anyone's work that he has built survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, it will be lost, but he will be saved. Yet it will be like an escape through fire." Guys, there's going to come a day when, maybe we don't think about this, there's going to come a day when we're before God's judgment seat. And he's gonna look at Christ and he's going to say, "You're righteous. I see Christ's righteousness." But God doesn't just forget the things that we've done. We're rewarded based on our actions. And so many times we stress God's forgiveness so much, which is great, but we forget what it's like to aim to be pure, to aim to be innocent in the power of the Holy Spirit. We can't do it on our own, but to aim to be as close to Christ as we can. And so there's so many of you who have been affected by sin in your lives, that you have this taint in your lives. But I want to celebrate those of you who have not been as experienced in the ways of the world as other people. I know when I came to college as a homeschooler, and I didn't know anything about anything, and people made fun of me for it. And eventually I got a lot more crude and cynical, and so I adapted. But I wish that I wouldn't have as much, because there's something to be said for being innocent. And Paul is saying here that we need to avoid evil. God's grace covers everything. God forgives everything, but we'll be rewarded based on our actions. And we're supposed to flee evil. We're supposed to be unmixed with the ways of the world. So Oh, we'll get to that later. There's one more thing. He tells us to avoid two things. He tells us to avoid tempters and troublemakers, and he tells us to avoid evil. And he says that we can do this by God's power. Look in verse 25 through the end. It says, "Now to him who has the power to strengthen you according to my gospel and the proclamation about Jesus Christ." And then he goes on, and I was going to show you guys how to chart out a verse, but we don't have time for that. But basically what he's saying is God, through the gospel, has the power to strengthen us. He's talking about all these things that we're supposed to avoid evil, that we're supposed to avoid people that cause to sin and temptations in our lives. And the way that we do this is through God's power. It's only through God's power. It says, "Now to him who has the power to strengthen you, down to the according to the command of the eternal God, to advance the obedience of faith among all nations." And every layer of this last doxology thing goes back to previous passages in Romans. He talks about in Romans 1:5 about the obedience of faith being brought to all the nations, and he's bringing it back here. The whole purpose of God is to bring obedience that's caused by our faith in Jesus Christ, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's how we do these things. That's how we obey. We're transformed into Christ's image by the power of God. So to summarize, we're supposed to avoid tempters and troublemakers. We're supposed to avoid evil, and we do these things by the power of God. And as an application, I would encourage you guys, I don't know, it breaks my heart when I was thinking about some of this stuff earlier, just about how much stuff that you guys have seen, how much stuff that you guys have done, how much you've been exposed to. It breaks my heart when I think of all the stuff that I wish that I could take back. And so, when you guys have the opportunity this week and ongoing, I would just encourage you to flee evil. Don't mix it up in your life like this. It's going to be forgiven when we get to heaven. It's going to be forgiven, but it does cause, number one, damage to our relationship with God, and number two, it causes us to lose rewards. And we're going to have those rewards for eternity. And sin is just so fleeting. Not to mention that when you add in just a couple of drops, if you just add in a couple of drops of something evil, of music that you shouldn't be listening to, or movies that aren't glorifying to God, or gossip, or pornography, or whatever it is, when you add in a couple of drops like that, sin is like a snowball. You just start rolling like this little snowball down a hill, and it gets bigger and bigger. By just even flirting around with evil, you ensure that more of it will enter into your life. So just don't be around it at all. But again, as an encouragement for those of you who have flirted around with evil, this is Christ's righteousness, and that's what God sees when He'll look at us in heaven. So don't be discouraged by the times that you failed, but do press on to avoid all evil. And so that's what I've got for you today, and Levi and the worship team are going to come back up. I'll clean off this plate.